Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make homemade cheese danishes. Hey everyone, it's Sam here, and today I'm really excited to be sharing my recipe for homemade cheese danishes. Now, mostly we're going to be focusing on the filling and how to prep these danishes. I've shared my homemade puff pastry before, and that's what we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and jump into the filling portion of this recipe. Now, before we start, you actually want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you are going to need 8 ounces or 1 brick of cream cheese, and you want this to be nicely softened. We'll add this to a medium-sized bowl, and my cream cheese is nice and soft and should be pretty easy to stir, but if for any reason yours isn't, if it needs to be a little bit warmer in order to be able to stir it with a spoon, you can pop it in the microwave for about 10-second increments until it is nicely softened. I'm just using my spoon to make sure mine's going to be easy to stir. Everything looks pretty good, so we're going to add our granulated sugar. You'll need 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. Stir together the sugar and the cream cheese until it's completely combined. And now we'll add a teaspoon of lemon juice and 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract and stir those in as well. Once your cream cheese filling is nice and smooth, you're going to want to grab your batch of homemade puff pastry. So this is 1 batch of homemade puff pastry. I will leave the link to the recipe in the description because I already shared a video tutorial on exactly how to make this puff pastry. Now, if you want to use store-bought, you can. This homemade version is the equivalent of 1 box of store-bought puff pastry. What you'll want to do is you'll want to transfer this to a lightly floured surface and divide the dough into 2 even pieces. Now, if you're using a store-bought puff pastry, it's already going to be divided into 2 sheets for you, so you're just going to be working with 1 sheet at a time. I'm going to take 1/2 of this dough, I'm going to wrap it back up in plastic wrap and stick it in the fridge. That way it stays nice and cool while we're working with the first half of our puff pastry. Now roll this pastry out until you have a 12 by 12 inch square. Once you have a nice 12 by 12 inch square, you'll want to cut this into 4 even squares. You can just use a sharp knife. I just like to use a pizza wheel. It makes it a little bit easier. I also like to usually trim up the edges just a little bit so I have a nice neat square, just going to make it look a little bit neater when we're folding up our danishes. You'll want to transfer these squares to a parchment paper lined cookie sheet. Now I want to show you 2 different ways that you can fold up these danishes to make them look nice and pretty. The first is a very classic, very simple way. You're going to start by scooping about 2 tablespoons of your cream cheese filling into the center of your pastry square. I'm just going to gently, very gently flatten that, and then fold up each of the corners towards the center, but I'm not going to actually have the corners meet. Like I said, very easy, very simple, very basic, and it tastes very good. Now, I also wanted to show you another fun way to decorate these pastries. If you have a little bit more time, this is actually very simple, but it makes a nice pinwheel effect for your Danish. You're going to want to use a sharp knife and basically cut an X into this pastry square. Now, you're going to want to leave a space in the center so it's not a true X. We're just going to cut from the corner towards the center, leaving an uncut space in the center of the square. Now essentially what you have here is 4 separate triangles. What you're going to do is you're going to take the corner of one end of the triangle and fold that towards the center. Leave the other corner of the triangle untouched, then move on to the next corner, fold that towards the center, and repeat until every other corner has been folded into the center. Now we'll dollop our cream cheese filling right in the center of that pinwheel. Now before we head over to the oven, we're going to brush the tops of these danishes with just a bit of egg wash, which we're going to make by just whisking together 1 egg and 2 teaspoons of water. We'll just brush this generously over the top of our pastry dough. You do not need to brush it over the cream cheese on the pinwheels, just the dough. All right, let's take these Danishes over to our 400 degrees Fahrenheit preheated oven, where they're going to need to bake for about 17 to 19 minutes or until they're a nice golden brown color, or at least a light golden brown color. Now, don't forget you have another half of puff pastry in the fridge. You're going to want to roll that out and repeat everything I just showed you. Use the rest of your cream cheese filling and make your next 4 Danishes. So when these Danishes first come out of the oven, they're going to be really puffed up. That's fine. They're supposed to look like this, and they're going to settle down a little bit as they cool. Now, while they're cooling, we can go ahead and prepare our glaze. You're going to need 1 cup of powdered sugar, and you'll also need about 3 to 5 teaspoons of milk. We'll start with just 3 teaspoons and then add more as needed. And I like to use a whisk to stir everything together. That consistency looks just about right, so now I'm just going to stir in a half teaspoon of vanilla extract for some flavor. You'll want to let your cheese Danishes cool at least for a few minutes before you drizzle them with glaze. I like to give them at least 15 minutes of cooling on the baking sheet. Once they've cooled, you can go ahead and drizzle them with your glaze. Now, I strongly believe that cheese Danishes are best when served warm, but if you'd like, you can wait until the glaze hardens, which will take about 30 minutes or so before digging in. And that is how you make homemade cheese Danishes. I really hope you guys try out this recipe. It is one of my family's all-time favorites. It beats anything that you can buy pre-made at the store. I think you're really gonna love this one. If you tried this recipe out, please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. These are good.